Hello again, everyone. I am Chris Scherer, and this is the Citizen Sports Weekly for Wednesday, December 8th, 2021. Robert Harding officially back. Justin Ritzel never left. Thank goodness. Justin, just want to say thanks again for your great job of running the show the last month. There was nary a hiccup, no technical issues. We went live when we were supposed to. So I just want to say thanks and props for all that you did during the month that Robert was off.
Well, it's the least I could do considering I'm contributing nothing to the pick four with my selections this year. So if I have to become the technical expert to make up for it, I'm happy to do so.
Well, Justin, as you know, the video is more than just us picking games. There's some pretty good sports conversation in this video. And, you obviously do a great job contributing to that. So, all right. What are we going to do? Want to do picks first, or you want to do the other topics first?
You're the host.
All right. All right. Well, let's do we'll do the takeaways, the picks, and then the college football topic last. So, takeaways from week 13. Obviously, the biggest takeaway is what happened to the Buffalo Bills. What happened to the team that was supposed to steamroll to the AFC East, was going to be the number one seed in the AFC, and was just going to go right to the Super Bowl and end the curse. What happened to that team? New England is what happened to that team. I mean, that game was bizarre. If you had told me going in that Mac Jones was going to attempt 3 passes and New England was going to win, I would have said, what planet are you on? What are you smoking? That was a crazy, crazy game. And look, give New England credit. They ran the football effectively. The Bills were in it the whole game, obviously, because it was a low-scoring game, and the Bills had their chances. But, wow, it's almost like the Bills are, like, psyched out by Bill Belichick and the Patriots. There's some type of mental block with this team. I mean, look, they swept them last year. I get that. But something's going on. I mean, there's just something going on with this team. And then when they see the Patriots, they become another team. It's bizarre. And that really is my big takeaway from week 13 is what is going on with the Buffalo Bills. Robert, you're the Bills fan. Maybe you know more than I do. Go ahead. What's your takeaway from week 13? Maybe it's the same one as me.
Well, it's certainly related to the Bills, but I think it's that game really sums up their season. They have, I give the Patriots credit for running the ball well, but the Bills had plenty of opportunities in that game, as they have in most games they've lost this year. They blew it against the Titans. Josh Allen slips, quarterback sink there would have been a touchdown or at least a first down and keep the game going. And then the defense just completely crapped their pants in that game as well. And you look at the Jacksonville game, the Indianapolis game. After all these games, the Bills kept telling us that, we have to be better. This is just a bad day. Well, this is who they are. This is an underachieving team this year that's really in danger of missing the playoffs. They're in the 7th spot right now. That gets you in the dance. That's all well and good. But there's teams nipping at their heels. The Colts are right there. And let me tell you, that team has certainly poured it on as of late, and they could easily beat the Bills out there if the Bills lose this weekend against the Buccaneers. And then guess what? They got another game against the Patriots coming up. They could easily be a 500 team here entering the final stretch of the season and needing those last games against pushovers or would-be pushovers to go their way to even get in, maybe get in. They could be on the outside looking. So it's been a disappointing season. I was disappointed after the Monday night game, and I think that a lot of Bills fans are because, we know that this team can play better. I think that what's going on with this team, and we had a hint of it with McDermott's press conference, that there's definitely some dissension among the coaching staff, I think. because I don't know what's going on offensively. There seems to be some dueling thoughts. Oh, we've got to run the ball and all this other stuff. Look, I agree. You have to have some semblance of a running game, but you have one of the best running quarterbacks in the league. Maybe use him a little bit more than trying to rely on these running backs behind that weak offensive line to get you 2 and 3 yards. The play calling and the offensive game plan from Brian Dable absolutely sucked on Monday. And that's been the case in some of these games this year. This guy was supposedly this, prized candidate for head coaching jobs. And I think we're seeing why some teams were hesitant that, and you did see hints of this last year that, some games he just comes in and it's a pretty bland game plan. His play calling isn't that great. And it makes you wonder about his vision for this offense. So I won't ramble on anymore about the Bills. It's a disappointing season. I picked them to win the Super Bowl. I didn't think they would steamroll necessarily through the AFC. I knew that conference would be strong with the Chiefs there, the AFC North teams, obviously the Titans, the Colts. So, I think what's happening here is that they're just underachieving. They have all the talent there. This is the same team, basically, that went 13-3 last year and made the AFC Championship game. No excuses for what's happening now. They're just flat out underachieving, playing piss poor football, and letting down their fan base. And they easily could miss the playoffs. I saw the other day there were odds plus 330. I'd sprinkle some money on that because the way that they're playing, they could easily miss out.
Yeah. Any other takeaways, Robert? Or is that it?
I'm done.
All right, Justin.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Robert said. I mean, just kind of looking back on the play calling in that game, this is not a strategy that you should be doing for the entire season, but that was a game where knowing the Bills just don't really have the talent at running back, where you just put the ball in Josh Allen's hands and have him on design runs 15 times. You don't want to do that all year because you're exposing him to getting hurt. But the fact is, when you have a quarterback with the rushing ability like he does, like Lamar Jackson, it becomes a numbers game. You can throw out another blocker and just put Allen in shotgun and allow him to find those seams. And the Bills, I think, they got psyched out by the wind. They forgot that they drafted Josh Allen and his big arm specifically for games like that. And they didn't really decide to use him as much as probably they could have. I mean, I think he still ended up throwing it 30 times, but just kind of a bizarre insistence on using Zach Moss and Singletary and Matt Breida when that's there's a saying that a guy I follow who covers the Packers always says when the Packers just kind of have one of those weird games, it's a message to the coaches: coach the team that you have. Don't try to be something you're not. The Bills are not this power running team where they're going to line up in I formations and hand the ball off to Zach Moss. And, basically they're not like the Patriots. The Patriots are happy to do what they do, shorten the game, run the ball, run 3 or 4 different plays and let that be it. The Bills are not that team. They rely on their very creative and athletic quarterback who's got a big arm and big plays. And I think, again, the wind kind of psyched them out and they decided they wanted to win this game in a phone booth, and that's just not their strength. So I will say, I'm going to have a column going online because I was a little frustrated, and I tweeted this, frustrated with the amount of people who after that game said, this is why Buffalo needs a dome stadium. There is not a sillier point of view for a team that plays in Western New York that has a team from Florida in its own division to say, oh, let's neuter our biggest advantage, which in theory should be the weather. Let's neuter that for the sake of, oh, we have this big arm quarterback and he can't have the perfect passer rating because he's got to deal with snow and wind. Again, you draft Josh Allen because his big arm as an advantage in those situations. You don't cater to the visiting teams who are used to playing in warm weather and all that. Remember, a lot of NFL players are from the South. So they grow up living in warm conditions that you see in Miami and in Louisiana and California and all that. And when you also play in those conditions for the entire year, it is terrible trying to come to places like Buffalo or Green Bay, especially in December and January, to try and win games. You're just not used to it. I know that a lot of Bills players probably don't love playing in the cold, but there is something to be said for living in it day in and day out and just being prepared for what those conditions can do. So, like I said, I'm going to have a column on that because it's just a very frustrating point of view. And it's kind of topical considering the Bills stadium situation right now. But I don't think we need to touch on any other games. At least I don't, because that was the game of the week. And, the Bills obviously fell short.
Okay. Let's get to the picks.
I just want to add something about Josh Allen. Rich reminded me of this. It's easy to look at Josh Allen's stat line and say, "Oh, he had a poor game." I think his final stats 15 of 30. He had a lot of drops in that game. That throw to Stephon Diggs was a great throw. I think the wind was at his back somewhat, but they did say that it was a crosswind a bit. To make that throw in the wind was incredible. Stephon Diggs should have made that catch. There were multiple throws to Dawson Knox that were dropped, and I think that there was a drop in there too, by somebody else. But I think if the players make those plays, we're talking about a Bills victory. We're talking about a much better stat line for Josh Allen, and that's football, game of inches. And in the case of the Diggs drop, uncharacteristic for him. But Josh Allen isn't. There were a lot of things out there about, Josh Allen's going to regress this year. He hasn't regressed. He's played as good, if not better, than he did last year. The difference this year, overall, the Bills just aren't performing well in some critical situations. The red zone offense has been mediocre at best. So none of this is on Josh Allen. Maybe there's certain plays that he would like back, but overall, this is more of a team and I think coaching staff issue with the Bills that needs to get figured out.
Robert, would you describe yourself as embarrassed after that game, or?
I mean, if I'm, it wasn't an embarrassment. Jerry Sullivan, I get, he's kind of an old school sports writer, so there's like there's these times you like to take a little pot shot or whatever. I mean, I thought his question was, probably out of frustration given how this team was expected to perform this year and how they've performed, especially as of late. They're 3-4 in their last 7. But I get why the players were a little upset in the moment about that, because it's like, you just lost that game. It's a frustrating loss, a costly loss, but it wasn't a blowout. I think the Colts game was an embarrassment. This game, not so much.
Okay. All right, let's get to the picks. We all went 1-3 last week. It was another sterling week for us. I'm 1 game under 500, 25-26. Robert is 21-30, and Justin, I will not say your record out of just not to rub anything in. So, all right. Our first game, then Robert changed this game at the last minute, but he changed it today. It's the Niners at the Bengals, a rematch of 2 Super Bowls, Super Bowl 16 and Super Bowl, I believe, 24 or 23. 23. Anyways, Niners, Bengals at Cincinnati. Bengals laid an egg last week against the Chargers. They played like absolute garbage. Although they did rally. They were within 2. Mixon had a fumble, and that was the end of it. The Niners go on the road to a horrible Seattle team and lay a even bigger egg, in my opinion. And the Niners had a chance to get back in that game, couldn't do it. So it's Bengals -1, which is basically a pick'em game. Look, I'll take the Bengals at home. I mean, they should have won last week. They need to win this game. You know, the Ravens are definitely faltering. The Bengals know that if they can get their act together, they can win the NFC North. So being only a point and the Niners being on the road a second week and playing in the Eastern time zone, which is never good for West Coast teams, and it's only 1 point, I'm going with the Bengals to cover the -1. Go ahead, Robert.
I wish we had, special effects for the production, because every time you say something like short week or Eastern time zone, there'd be a graphic that come up with a sound effect. Boom, Shiraism. I love it.
Who's in the lead, by the way? Who's leading the pack right now? This guy. You make fun of the Shiraism.
You every time you throw around, who's in the lead, you get knocked down a few pegs.
All right.
1 and 3.
I went 1 and 3 last week.
I went 1 and 3, just like the other two. So
yeah, I know. Yeah.
Enough stalling. I'll pick the Bengals in this game too. I think it's a toss up really between these two teams. As you mentioned, Chris, they're both coming off real stinkers. That Bengals loss to the Chargers was disappointing. I think the Chargers are, I think, a similar team. They've had their ups and downs this year, but that for the Bengals to play like that at home, to give up, I think they were down 24-0 early on in that game. That's not good football. They need to play better than that. The Niners, inconsistent. I mean, that's it's tough to really figure out that team. I think they may have been missing Deebo Samuel in that game for sure. But, I like the Bengals in this one. I think, Burrow and Mixon, they can get things figured out in this one and win a home game against a California team.
Justin, who do you got?
Well, Chris, it's funny you mentioned a West Coast team coming to Cincinnati to play in the how tough that'll be to come in and win a game. Except for the fact that that's literally what the Chargers did last week.
Yeah, no, it's true. That's true. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it does happen.
I don't think the Bengals, have earned that respect of being a team that you should worry about home field too much. Or they're inconsistent. I mean,
that's true.
But they just haven't earned that respect from me. I'm going to try something this week. God knows my general thinking this year has been completely off. I'm just going to fade myself. So whatever I'm thinking is going to happen, I'm going to pick the opposite. So
Costanzing it. He's Costanza. Joking.
So I don't know what to make of this Bengals team. As Robert mentioned, the Niners were without Deebo Samuel last week. Fred Warner, who's their middle linebacker, who is probably their best defensive player. I don't think he played last week either. He practiced in full today, so he should be back. So my inclination is to pick the Niners and take the extra point. Especially, Bengals lost by multiple scores last week. At least the Niners had a close game. George Kittle's coming on. I think the Niners would be my pick normally, but because of my new strategy, I'm going to take the Bengals.
Oh, God, this is going to be fun. He's going to go 4-0. Watch it. All right, our next game, the Dallas Cowboys at the Washington football team. Washington football team coming off a very gutsy win at Vegas, last-second field goal with their new kicker, who I guess is from the Washington, D.C. area. And then the Cowboys, they played last Thursday. It's been almost a week for them. And they play the Saints, I believe, beat the Saints, right? So Cowboys, this is a huge game. I think if the Cowboys win this game, they basically got the NFC North wrapped up. Rivalry game. It's a rivalry game, obviously divisional game. The teams know each other very well. Boys are favored by 4. Something, this Montez Sweat thing with Washington. He's out with COVID. Nice distraction. He was unvaccinated, and he's got COVID. So the nice little distraction is the last thing that the Washington football team needs. The boys are well rested, And I'm going with the Cowboys to cover the -4. I know I might regret this because it is a divisional game and they're on the road, but I'm going with the Cowboys to cover -4. Go ahead, Justin. Who do you like?
Well, let's be honest. The Cowboys have lost 3 of their last 5 games. Their wins in that span have come against the absolutely pitiful Atlanta Falcons. And then last week against the Saints, who are missing half their roster and had to start a quarterback who, for some reason, the offensive genius, Sean Payton, insists on paying money to and playing. Taysom Hill is terrible. Like, in terms of ability to throw a football, he's the worst quarterback in the league. I don't think there's any question. His decision making isn't there. His arm strength isn't there. So I don't really put too much stock into that game. And it was a 10-point game still. It's not like the Cowboys ran away and won that by 3 touchdowns. So the Cowboys, in my opinion, should not be favored favored by 4 points against really anyone aside from the absolute worst teams in the league. Washington's been playing well. They do have a decent defensive line, even though they're going to have some absences there. So I would pick Washington here, but again, I'm going against my gut this week. I'll take those lame Dallas Cowboys.
Oh my God, this is hilarious. I love it. Robert, who do you like?
This is an interesting matchup. I know, Chris, you make a big deal about this Montez Sweat thing. I think he was.
No, I didn't make a big deal. I just mentioned it. It is. Look, it does play a factor.
You said it's a distraction.
I said it's a distraction. I didn't make it as like a huge giant thing. I just said it is worth mentioning, though, and he is one of their top defensive players. So it does have an impact on Washington.
Well, I mean, here's what I'll say is that I think he was hurt before this anyway. So, I don't know how much of an impact it'll have. Washington's on a 4-game winning streak. They beat Tampa Bay, which is pretty nice win. The Taylor Heineke, revenge game after his performance last year against Tampa Bay in the playoffs and nearly beating them. And the defense has played better. They've given up no more than 21 points in their last 4 games in this 4-game winning streak. So, the Cowboys seem a little shaky to me, and I don't know what it is. I think they're, kind of getting away from, what works for them. They had, I think Cooper was back last week, Lamb was back last week, and they still couldn't seem to figure out how to move the ball well. Dak Prescott didn't play all that well in that game. Saints defense is tough, which is why with the Washington defense being as tough as it is, I'm picking them to cover in this one. The Cowboys could eke out a win, but I like Washington in this one just based on how they're playing. Dallas has been struggling lately. Washington's been on a roll. I think Washington can make the NFC East a little bit interesting down the stretch here. This is the first of 2 matchups between these teams, and I think they'll take I think they'll make it close with the Cowboys on Sunday.
All right, our third game is Robert's Buffalo Bills going on the road to lovely Tampa Bay to face their old buddy Tom Brady. The Bucs are 3-point favorites. Yeah, the Bucs have been inconsistent. They've been up and down, and they've had some injuries and a lot of other things, and COVID, and anyways. And of course, we've discussed the Bills ad infinitum, so we don't need to go into many details here. Look. Northern team going down south, playing in the heat. Tom Brady owns the Bills, but my gut says go with the Bills, though. But I'm picking the Bucs. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games where I could see the Bills come in. Oh, it's beautiful weather. They can finally throw the football effectively, and the old Bills offense is back and everything. But we all know Tampa Bay's got a pretty good defense. And again, Tom Brady owns the Bills. The familiarity always helps. So I am going with the Bucs to cover the -3 and beat Buffalo. So go ahead, Robert. I know you're waiting.
I mean, with that rationale, going against the gut's pretty risky, but who knows? I think like Antonio Brown's vaccination card, the Bills are phonies. That's what it's come down to here. I have no faith in this team anymore. Maybe they will make the playoffs, but who knows? I just think the Bucks with Brady and that offense, they've got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin's kind of the new safety valve for Brady. The Julian Edelman, the Wes Welker type. Just throw him the ball, 10, 15 times a game like they did last week, and you can move the ball down the field. And Gronk's healthy again. So that offense should be doing pretty well. And Leonard Fournette's just having a great year. That guy's a weapon for Tampa Bay. The defense has been okay. I mean, they've been struggling with some injury woes. I don't think it's been as good as last year. Played a little bit better lately, I think, but overall that defense has been disappointing. But I'm taking the Bucks in this one. I don't think you probably won't have weather as a factor this week. I think the Bucks could easily roll over the Bills the way that the Bills have been playing lately. Could be a shootout, but the Bills could put up some points. But I don't know. That defense, we'll see if they can bounce back. But no confidence here. I'll take the Bucks by 10 in this one.
Ooh, wow, boy, you are down on your team, aren't you? Wow.
Yeah, I'm just
disgusted.
One thing, and I'm sure you guys are not going to be surprised to hear this. One thing I hate in life is underachievers. You show up and do your jobs and you do it well. Okay. And this business of playing piss poor football week in and week out, and not playing consistent is just maddening. And for guys that make millions of dollars to do what they do, they should be doing a hell of a lot better job than they're doing. So that's just the bottom line.
All right. Justin, who do you like?
Well, I know this seems like an unwinnable game for the Buffalo Bills. They're coming off a terrible loss. The Bucks, I think everyone has kind of anointed them as one of the three teams in the NFC that can go win this whole thing. And understandably so. They're the defending Super Bowl champions. And Tom Brady, while I don't necessarily agree with it, is probably not probably, he is, based on the odds, the favorite for MVP right now. But
I knew the butt was coming.
Football is a game of matchups. What do the Buffalo Bills do well? Well, they defend the pass well. They're one of the best pass defenses in the league. Granted, that's without Trey White now. Obviously, you're going to take a step back, but they still have a great safety combo. What do the Bills do poorly on defense? Well, obviously, defending the run. Well, the Buccaneers' strength, supposedly, is passing the ball, even though Tom Brady is throwing interceptions on a weekly basis, and they stink at running the ball. So you look at that side of things. The Bucks don't do well what would crush the Bills. They just don't run the ball. They're the complete opposite of the Patriots. Then you look at the other side. What do the Buccaneers do well on defense? Well, they stop the run. Oh, well, the Bills don't really care about that because they're bad at running the ball. What do the Buccaneers do poorly? Well, they really don't have depth in their secondary. They were relying on Richard Sherman, to come in. They're really banged up in that. Well, what do the Bills do well? Well, Josh Allen has a big arm and he can really chuck the ball. So I think, this kind of strategically or just based on matchups, this is kind of a game that favors the Bills. But as I have done with my first two picks, I'm going to go against what I actually think. I think the Bills can win this game despite everyone, including Robert, being down on them. But I will also take the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I love this. This is great. Our last game, the Los Angeles Rams. By the way, I love saying Los Angeles Rams. It wasn't the same when they were in St. Louis. They never should have left. They should always be the Los Angeles Rams. At the Arizona Cardinals, the Rams came off a shellacking of the Jags, which was everybody was expecting. The Cards, great win on the road against a very woeful Chicago team. Kyler Murray's back. He's healthy. He's rolling. And the Cards are 2.5-point favorites. That means all I got to do is win by a little field goal. The Rams are reeling, even though they did win well last week. But I'm going with the Cardinals, the home team, to cover the -3. So that's who I got. Go ahead, Justin. Who do you like in this game?
Yeah, the Cardinals absolutely stomped the Rams in Los Angeles when they played earlier this year. And it was just kind of one of those, like, no one really, the Cardinals, let's be honest, they were expected to finish last in this division. The Rams are supposedly a Super Bowl contender, and that was kind of a shocking result. It was the first game where it was kind of like, oh, wow, we should start paying attention to the Cardinals. But then a few weeks later, they lose to Green Bay on a Thursday night game when the Packers are starting janitors at wide receiver because of all their injuries and COVID issues. Then Kyler Murray gets hurt. Hopkins is hurt. They don't play the next 3 games. And last week was finally the game when those 2 guys were back. And, I think there's been this weird thing this week where it's like people are advocating that the Cardinals have not gotten enough respect. They're 10-2, they're number 1 in the NFC. And now suddenly this 11-point win over the Chicago Bears, now suddenly we have to start respecting the Cardinals. I don't know. I'm skeptical that Kyler Murray can stay healthy. I think that they're going to lose another game some here down the stretch. They have a really tough schedule over the last final 5 games here. And the Rams, I think everyone has kind of buried them after, just understandably a few tough weeks. I don't think they're back because they beat the Jaguars. So the Cardinals would be the team that I would pick here. I think they are hands down the better team. But I'm going to take the Rams, completing this week of going against myself. We'll see how this strategy works.
He's going to go 4-0, folks. He's going to go 4-0. Watch it. It's going to be hilarious. It's the 4-0 week. It's coming. I can feel it.
I mean, I hope that I actually go 0-4 because that will just make me feel better about my opinions. Like, yeah, hey, dummy, the first week that you went against your gut is when you had your worst week. So I would feel better about myself actually if I went 0-4.
Well, the thing is,
my opinions this season haven't been totally crazy. I've just had some bad luck. That's what I'm hoping for. But
well,
you're right. I'll probably go 4-0. Who knows?
We agree on 3 of those picks, so I'm hoping you don't go 0-4 because that means I go 1-3, and I don't want that to happen. So I really would love to see you go 4-0. Then I would go 3-1, which would still be pretty darn good. So, all right, Robert, your pick for this game.
To Ritz's point, again, the Rams lost to the Cardinals already this year, and that game wasn't particularly close. The Rams have been struggling lately. I get that they beat the Jaguars, but any good team should beat the Jaguars. The Bills did not, so read into that what you will. But the Rams beat the Jaguars and by a sizable margin, 37-7, I think. Other than that, though, they have not played well against good teams. They lost to the Packers, obviously. They lost to the 49ers, lost to the Titans before that. So, for me, the Cardinals, especially with Kyler back there, you got DeAndre Hopkins. They should win this one pretty easily. I'm going to take them in this one and for them to cover.
All right. Cardinals for Robert. All righty. All right. So our last what?
Did you pick the Cardinals too, Chris?
Yes, I did.
Okay, just check.
So we agree on that one. So, yeah, we only differ on one game. That's the Dallas-Washington football team. We agree on everything else. So, all right. So our last topic is the college football playoff. It's going to be Michigan and Georgia and Cincinnati and Alabama. And the question is, who do we like? So I hate Alabama. Everybody knows it. I don't like Nick Saban. Okay, I'm sorry. I haven't forgiven him. It's been almost 15 years. Then 15. Actually, it'll be 15. Yeah, it's 15 years this month that he said, how many times I got to say it? I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. I'm sorry, man. I just don't forgive people that lie like that. So, but that being said, you got to respect Alabama and what they've done and everything. And, Cincinnati is interesting because, everybody's kind of knocking them because they don't play in the big conference and, they haven't played a tough schedule, whatever. But something, they're a pretty good football team. I mean, they wouldn't be here if they weren't a good football team. And I would love to pick Cincinnati pull off the upset, no doubt about it. Now, this isn't counting our picks, obviously. This is just, we're talking here. Alabama, I watched that game against Georgia, and Alabama has a good offense, but it didn't really impress me from the standpoint of some of their older offenses where they were scoring points left and right and everything. And this is not a great Alabama team. Okay. But that being said, they've done what they've done and they're there. And that's what, so, something, what the hell? I'm going to pick Cincinnati to pull off the upset. Why not? What the heck? It's not part of our picks or anything. I think Cincinnati's got a chip on their shoulder and something to prove. And I think they can pull off the upset against an Alabama team that's not as good as it's been. I know there's going to be some people out there that are going to be shaking their heads, but anyways. And then we have Michigan and Georgia. And Michigan, to their credit, has had a great season. Jim Harbaugh got the Ohio State albatross off his back. They dominated Iowa. They blew out Iowa. I almost thought they were going to have a letdown maybe, and Iowa was going to keep it close. But Michigan is just playing great football right now. It seems like they're very motivated and everything. Georgia, I mean, look, if Georgia wasn't in the SEC, there's no way they're in the playoff losing that last game to Alabama. They did not look good. It's the first time I've seen Georgia play this year. I mean, they were the number one team in the country. They were supposed to be dominant, great defense, and Alabama torched them. So why not? Why not take Michigan? I mean, should a Big Ten team beat an SEC team? No, absolutely not. It shouldn't happen. But why not? So let's have an all Midwestern championship game between Michigan and Cincinnati. And I'll take Michigan to win the whole kit and caboodle and win the national championship. Why not? All right, Robert, who do you like?
Well, unlike you, who has apparently been hit the bottle before this video, of course, I'm picking Alabama and Georgia to advance to the title game. Really, they're the two best teams here. I know that there's going to be plenty of Wolverine fans that think that Michigan could beat Georgia, but I think after that performance against Alabama, that Georgia defense is going to want that rematch bad, and that's been their hallmark. Georgia, if you watch any amount of college football, you heard about it for weeks. Georgia's given up 6 points a game or whatever it was, and then they give up 42 against Alabama. So I think they're going to want that rematch in a bad way. And look, I will be rooting for Cincinnati. You root for the underdog. You root for these smaller, not smaller teams, but these teams that really don't get the amount of opportunities that the Power Five conferences usually do, or at least the SEC and Big Ten, for example. But I think Alabama, even though they have their flaws, are certainly the better team. They do have the likely Heisman Trophy winner Bryce Young at quarterback. So I think that they should be able to beat Cincy. And then, from there, I like Georgia against Alabama. I think, Georgia is going to be hungry again to prove that, Alabama roughed us up, a few weeks back, but, we're going to go and take it to them in the championship game. And we're going to show what we can do on defense that we didn't do before, and really humble Alabama and that, and again, their Heisman Trophy winner. So I'm looking forward to that rematch. I think it could be compelling, especially with the way Georgia played in that last matchup. And if they get another chance, I think that they'll rise to the occasion against Alabama and win the national title.
All right, Justin.
Well, this is just why I'm really not one of the many reasons, but why I'm not interested in college football, because I just feel like it's the same story every year. Alabama gets in, even in a year that's supposedly a down year, and they're probably going to go on and win it. So this is not really a captivating thing for me. And on top of that, they benefit from the college football playoff committee finally deciding, hey, we're going to let in a team that's not a traditional power, not a Power 5 conference team. And hey, congratulations, we're going to throw you to the Wolves, Cincinnati. You get to go play Alabama, the defining college football program of the last, for a long time, obviously, but really during the Saban era. Hey, congrats on your participation trophy, and congrats on the inevitable result of losing by 4 touchdowns to the Crimson Tide. So I think the other game is obviously the more interesting one, but this will be, a nice litmus test, I guess, for those that have been advocating that The college football playoff has just been all about the Power Fives, and we need to give other schools from smaller conferences an opportunity. And, hey, obviously this conversation about increasing the number of teams in the college football playoff to include programs like Cincinnati. This is going to be a nice litmus test on if that's really a good idea. So we'll see if Alabama goes and wins this game comfortably, which I think they will en route to another national title. I think that's going to be a tough pill to swallow for some of these advocates for the smaller conference teams to be included in this kind of thing. So we'll see. I mean, it'd probably be a good thing for college football if Cincinnati makes this a game, but I just don't see it. And I'll definitely be looking more forward to a competitive Georgia-Michigan game. I wouldn't sleep on Michigan. They've really come on and just kind of have that feel of a team, that finally got over the hump and beat Ohio State. And maybe this is just that magical season for them. But I like Alabama because history suggests that Nick Saban, much to Shira's chagrin, is going to get it done here. They're still one of the most talented teams in college football, obviously, even if by their standard, this is a bit of a down season.
Yep. So, all right, gentlemen, we'll wrap it up. It's been fun as always. Robert, it's great to have you back officially.
Yeah. I just want to, say one thing about you guys, because, thanks to Ritz, I want to say this publicly so that people, don't think I'm a stooge or something. Thanks to Ritz for, running the behind the scenes operation. I put my trust in him because, sheer result. So, he probably can't figure it out. He did a great job, as expected. So, both you guys did well. I did watch, the shows while I was gone, and I enjoy them. The usual banter, only without me present. So that was fun to watch. But it's good to be back. Good to be back in the saddle here. On this, and then just at work. Been busy. Right off the get-go here, writing different stories every day and working on some others, including one for Sunday. So it's been, been a nice adventure as a working dad here. And, thanks to you both, you sent me messages through paternity leave and all that jazz. And I certainly appreciate your friendship and you guys being coworkers of mine. So, just wanted to say that, and so that a wider audience could hear it. Just beyond, a message or two.
Well, we do like to trade barbs, no doubt about it. And, but when it's all said and done, we're friends. And, that's what friends do, man. That's what we're here for.
And let me just
Robert,
say,
sometimes I feel immunized with our friendship. So I don't know.
On that note, let's look at my toe.
All right. Folks. Anything else before I wrap it up?
No, just that, I hope that the beard survives. I know that you're probably trying to convince Patty, Patty, look, the Dolphins are winning because I haven't shaved. And maybe she's sympathetic for that cause.
Well,
I hope that she's not. I hope she tells you, Chris, go shave that mess right now. I don't care what Robert says about you being a dignified professor. You need to get that scruff off your face. But, I appreciate you growing it out for the world to see.
It's a happy coincidence that the Dolphins have won every time that since I've stopped shaving. And of course they're on their bye week this week. So of course there will be no shaving, but my hunch is that eventually they're going to lose a game and then the beard will go most likely bye-bye eventually. So, and that's going to be a fun day because I know my wife will be thrilled when there's hairs all over the bathroom sink. She'll be thrilled with that. So got to be very careful when I do that. So, all righty, folks. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.